Nestled in the suburbs of West London are 320 acres containing one of the most amazing plant collections in the world. The Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew.
It's absolutely amazing how wonderful nature is.
From the historic glass houses
Wow, what a nice view.
to the ever-changing walks and vistas,
This is this tree's children.
we've been given special access to capture a year in the life of this unique place. With 17,000 species of plants to nurture
You were like a kid in a candy store. Oh, look what I've got, look what I've got.
and 2 million visitors to enchant,
The greenhouse is actually quite tall.
the staff are busier than ever.
There is quite an odour to it, so it's not advisable to stand too close.
Creating vibrant public displays
It's addictive to work with just so many beautiful flowers.
and doing vital work behind the scenes.
This unit is a big drone. In here is a laser that spins around.
Throughout the months and whatever the weather.
This is the cycle to have when you're having a bad day with the view of the farmhouse.
The gardens and the people who keep them alive never stay still. This is Kew, a year in bloom. May is here. At the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, it's a season of new beginnings. The last winter frosts are a distant memory. The trees are donning their green jackets. And the staff are harvesting fresh shoots to ensure the future of the gardens.
When I was here 3 weeks ago, this wasn't here. It's incredible how quickly it grows.
Inside the glass houses too, the staff are waiting in eager anticipation of some dramatic new blossom.
I guess he's going to be one of the pop stars of Instagram this weekend.
Go!
It's also the time of year when the annual crop of horticulture students start to find their feet.
One of the major challenges of this is just not getting poked in the eyes. I nearly got poked in the eye the other day. It's not good.
And to make room for the trees of the future, some long-standing residents must be gracefully retired.
I think we need to be brave and manage the landscape and not the trees.
One of the garden's most popular spring spectacles is the carpet of bluebells that appear in a natural area, parts of which date back 300 years.
I think we came really for the bluebells because we figured at this time they'd be out in force, but of course everything else.
Yeah, there's so much to see this time of the year.
We do photography lessons, and our tutor has sent us out to take some bluebell pictures. So here we are.
Every nice day or opportunity, just come to Kew.
And I get to tag along.
And he gets to tag along with me.
They're just a thing of beauty. And they're so fleeting, they're not here for long. So to capture that while you're here and drink it in, that's it really. Can't put it any better.
The garden's natural beauty doesn't happen by accident. It takes hundreds of horticulturists to care for it, all of them experts in their fields. In the woodland garden, Anna, one of the newest recruits, is giving a little support to some delicate wolfsbane.
I'm using hazel to weave supports for plants in the woodland that need a little bit of a hand. These have really, really large floppy flower spikes in the summer. Hopefully this will turn out okay, but I haven't made one this big before.
Anna is one of the talented few on Kew's diploma course, spending 3 years working in the gardens whilst learning from the best in the world.
Just to spend a day with someone who knows the most about peonies or woodland plants is just fantastic, and you just absorb knowledge from them like a sponge. One of the major challenges of this is just not getting poked in the eyes. I nearly got poked in the eye the other day. It's not good. It's a really, really satisfying job because you get to, create something from scratch, which is not something you often get that much of a chance to do. And you start with a literal pile of sticks and you finish with like a really cool natural structure that kind of looks like it has been grown.
Anna was one of just 11 students chosen for this career-making course, despite her interview not going quite the way she'd planned.
It was one of the most stressful interviews of my entire life. There were kind of normal interview questions, which I was good at, and then there were some not so normal interview questions, like name these structures on a flower. What kind of plant would you plant in a dry, dark area? And I hadn't got that much experience of some things at that point. So I was kind of like, oh, I haven't done this before. I have no idea. And as soon as it was over, I just cried. It was really stressful. And I was very surprised to get accepted. I'm surprised and delighted.
Today, Anna's added another string to her horticultural bow. But there's always something new to learn from the gardens, even for Kevin, head of tree collections. Today, he and Simon, the curator of living collections, need to solve a problem with a sickly red oak.
So what's happened is we've had a large failure on this side. There's been decay, which has been in there. Therefore, this tree's now a high-risk tree.
The oak is in an avenue of matched pairs of trees. Planted in 1844 as part of a major redesign of the gardens by famed landscaper William Nesfield. Almost 200 years later, the vistas he laid out are considered so important they helped the gardens earn UNESCO World Heritage status.
If we look at how it's been managed historically, down the vista line, we've got a mismatch in trees, and I think we need to be brave and manage the landscape and not the trees.
Kevin has a plan. Because the partner oak has a problem with a parasitic fungus, he wants to cut that one down too.
You're quite right. This tree is obviously severely damaged, isn't it? And that one has obviously got an extensive decay with that amount of fungal activity in it. So I can see what your plan is.
We have the responsibility to manage this view. We need to keep it symmetrical. So that's why we're looking at taking the pair out at the same time and then plant replacement trees so they grow together. So you get the uniformity of the view. There's a lot to take into consideration before we nail that species down to what we hope to plant.
Of course, the new trees will take decades to grow, so no one will know if it really is symmetrical until these two are long gone.
Some people say, how have you got the patience to do that when you'll never see the end result? But actually, we're lucky that we're managing what somebody else did 200 years ago or more. And so we're enjoying what they've done, but we have to think ahead. It's going to be a wonder tree when you find it.
While Kevin mulls over a replacement, in the temperate house, horticulturist Carlos, who hails from Spain, is playing a long game of his own. For a decade, he's been nurturing this rare blue amaryllis, which is flowering for the very first time.
It comes from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro, near a town called Petrópolis, and it lives in rocky outcrops.
Mostly on cracks in the rock where have some water coming from waterfalls or from underground streams of water.
Well, the flower has started to open today, and it will be expanding all the day until tomorrow, reflexing back the petals. There is a third one, which probably will start opening tomorrow. And I can see there is a fourth, so it is going to be blooming for a few days.
And I guess it's going to be one of the pop stars of Instagram this weekend, once it opens fully.
For Carlos, it's a proud moment. In 2012, he sowed some rare blue amaryllis seeds. 10 years later, it's finally in bloom.
There is something quite amazing, isn't it? When you have been growing something for so many years, probably didn't have any grey hair when I saw the seeds, and be able to complete the cycle, getting one seed, getting the plant, getting it to bloom, and then getting it to produce seeds again. Everybody talks about the flowers, but I really like the leaves, the shape they have, like a rooster tail, this kind of transparent edge they have in the side, the whole, I don't know, they look so perfect. It's really beautiful.
Carlos is, of course, biased. But over the next few days, the flowers will rapidly open, and the plant-loving public will give their verdict. Come back as the experts of tomorrow follow in the footsteps of giants.
So Alan Titchmarsh up there in course 7, he was a former student.
See Kevin exploring family trees.
A bit like when your children leave home, this tree is now self-sufficient and independent.
And find out about Kew's very own constabulary.
It was also locally known as a prodding stick, and it was used then for keeping undesirables at arm's length.
With the spring season well underway, things are getting livelier for the students at the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew, both outside and in the classroom. Tim, who runs the diploma course, knows some of these students could be tomorrow's horticultural megastars.
So this board of faces of former Kew diploma students is really a who's who of horticultural talent around the world. Many of these people are now working in fantastic horticultural positions. So Alan Titchmarsh up there in course 7, he was a former student. Alice Fowler was a former student. Matthew Biggs. There are a number of people that have made them a name for themselves that are former Kew diploma graduates.
Hoping to join them is third-year student Rob, whose current placement is behind the scenes in a tropical nursery.
So I'm the only one looking after this temperate zone 1, which is the cooler side of the temperate collection we have.
He spent the last few weeks propagating passion fruit vines from the American tropics.
As plants get bigger from when they're seedling or propagated by cuttings like these, they need to be potted into larger and larger pots until they reach their final size. This is because they become pot-bound, where the roots fill up the pot and it makes watering very hard and eventually can kill the plant. Some of these species are only found in Kew and a few partner institutions, so if they die, then it's quite a blow to the species as a whole. So there's quite a big responsibility to look after them properly.
Rob was already one of the select few allowed to study here, but he's about to join an even more exclusive club, students who get to stay on with a full-time job.
I feel quite lucky that I'm able to stay at Kew, so I'll be working the temperate collection here in the nursery after this placement. There is no life after Kew. I feel like I could stay here for a very long time. The plant collection and the people here are brilliant. I feel like I feel very at home here.
Rob has a career ahead of him, working with some of the rarest plants from across the world, like the blue amaryllis, which is fully open at last.
It's a really peculiar shape, actually. I think it's the first time I've seen a plant like this one, and the color of the flower as well is a bit unusual. I come from a tropical place, actually, and I've never seen a flower like this before. It looks very almost sculpted.
Carlos is also cooing over the plant that he's carefully nurtured from the ground up.
Yeah, and we have been cultivating it for a decade now. And I'm going to go funny, you know. I remember when he was born, you know, like I saw the seeds many years ago, and from something the size of a small pumpkin seeds to this, it has been a few thousand days.
In the hope he can produce more identical offspring, Carlos is trying to self-fertilize the flower with its own pollen. It was once thought blue amaryllis were incapable of self-seeding in this way, but in this place, even botanical miracles can happen.
We just need to sit back and wait. If it gets fertilized, then the ovaries here at the back will swell, and after a few months they will produce quite a lot of black seeds. So I am glad that it has kind of completed the cycle. And yeah, it's one of those things that I was always looking forward to see, and finally I do.
While the public marvel at Carlos's baby, out in the gardens, Kevin is looking for inspiration as he thinks about replacement trees for Pagoda Vista.
So here we're at the horse chestnut. So this is our common horse chestnut, or affectionately known as the conker tree due to the fruit it produces. So this tree in particular is really interesting. So this tree's gone through a form of reproduction that we call branch layering. So these descending branches have touched the floor, and now what it's done is now produced a root system. It then sets out a new tree. So this is this tree's children. This is like the umbilical cord. And once this tree becomes established and it's got its own canopy, it then cuts off the cells to this piece of wood from the mother tree, and then it severs it, and this is now dead. A bit like when your children leave home, this tree is now self-sufficient and independent and living on its own root system. And this is a really important way that trees can carry on spreading their genetics and carry on reproducing without actually having to produce seed.
Kevin also needs one eye on the future, and a tree from outside the UK may end up being better suited to our changing climate. Like Acer opalis, the Italian maple, which Kevin is already promoting as a climate-resistant tree for our streets and parks.
If we look closely at the leaves, they're layered. So this layering system produces shade underneath the leaf, and this probably helps it also in its dry climate because it's building up its shade levels. It can protect certain areas of the leaf to make sure that leaf is functioning at its optimum level all the time. And if we look carefully underneath the leaf, we can see there's very fine hairs. So as this tree respirates and releases moisture from its cells, that moisture attaches to this very fine hair, and again that helps to cool the leaf, and this makes it more adapted to growing into more warmer, drier, testing climate.
Whilst Kevin's search continues, the spring season wears on. The plants are growing ever larger, and so are the crowds. Few of them realise they're being kept safe by a unique police service, Kew Constabulary. It's overseen by John from a secret base hidden somewhere within the grounds.
Hello, control room.
Welcome to the control room. This is the only room in Kew that is staffed 24/7, 365 days a year. The team in here monitor and protect the gardens collections, the historic buildings, the visitors and staff across site.
The constables get around by bike or in their one electrically powered patrol car, and whilst the exact number of officers is confidential, it's thought to be one of the smallest police services in the world.
Kew Constabulary are an official police service, and we are the third oldest in the UK. When we first began in the 1840s with soldiers, and that changed to ex-police officers that were retiring from the Met and other services.
In the archives, John can see what passed for high-tech police gear when the service first started.
So here we have an original, what we call staff, which was for ceremonial duties at the gates where the constables used to stand on guard. It was also locally known as a prodding stick, and it was used then for keeping undesirables at arm's length.
At John's insistence, the constables no longer carry big sticks, or small ones for that matter. When he joined in 2007, one of his first orders to the troops was to look less like, well, troops.
I think times change, and Kew wants to be an inviting place for people to come to, and that involves changing the uniforms, removing the cuffs, removing the batons. We wanted to ensure the history of the constabulary was kept intact, because it's very important for our heritage, but equally to be a more modern, more proactive team with multi-skills.
One thing hasn't changed. Rules are rules.
Right, so this is our original garden regulations. This copy here is from December 1927. We still work to the basis of these today. Number 14, no authorised persons shall drill or practice military evolutions or use or carry arms in the gardens. No person shall use profane, indecent or obscene language. No person shall climb trees, railings or fences in the gardens. and we still have problems today with people climbing trees. So that's one of our issues that we deal with on a daily basis. It's a real privilege to work for Kew and to represent the constabulary. It's a job that I cherish, and I know the rest of my team really love working in such a beautiful place as Kew.
Come back and discover the secret to growing world-class trees.
Every plant will be different how long it needs to stay in the fog tent. It's just until it's rooted.
And head out on the beat with Kew's intrepid constables.
First aids, lost children, you can go to all sorts of places on your bikes. Not allowed on the grass.
Late spring at the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, is when staff across the site are busy tending to their young charges. The more mature plants are also bursting with new growth, making this the ideal time to take cuttings. Today, Fran and Jenny from the Arboretum nursery team are out hunting for green shoots.
So nice this time of year, the start of the softwood season. Hi Bex! We're just going to take some cuttings.
Over the last few weeks, this lime tree has produced an abundance of so-called softwood, which can be harvested to make new trees.
There's this one here. So this is the old season's growth, and then this is the nice new, literally in just 3 weeks. When I was here 3 weeks ago, this wasn't here. It's incredible how quickly it grows. This is a good length. We'll make our cut. Here, there's a high concentration of hormones just by the node, so there's the most potential for rooting here. So this is exactly what we're after.
Oh, that one as well. Once you get your eye in, it's like they're everywhere. It's just good to check if there's anything nasty looking on them as well, so we're not bringing anything back to the nursery.
Great.
I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Fran and Jenny will take their cuttings back behind the scenes to the Arboretum nursery, a state-of-the-art facility built in 2018. Mostly tucked away from public view, they grow row upon row of saplings as backups to replace fallen trees and new varieties for the future. It has 6 individually controlled growing zones, from a warm mist-filled fog tent for the seedlings to a room that's cold and dry for older plants.
So the purpose of our different growing zones is to move the plants through to help them acclimatise to a less supported environment, making plants ready and tough enough really to be growing outside, which is where we want them to be growing.
To give each tree the best chance, Jenny reduces the leaf surface as much as possible to limit moisture loss and gives each stem a dab of hormone powder to kick-start its growth.
We put as many as we can into a pot. I'll try and put about 5 to 8, depending on how much space I can get, because we have to maximise as much space as we can in the fog tents when it comes to this time of year. That one's been nibbled a bit. That's okay though, because the caterpillar is gone. But it's good to check on those things. As long as it's not there anymore, then we're fine, we're safe.
Free of bugs and given a good water, the cuttings are settled into a temporary home in the fog tent.
Every plant will be different how long it needs to stay in the fog tent. It's just until it's rooted. So it might be a month, might take the whole summer. It really depends. So yeah, we'll just be checking them once a week thoroughly, but then once a day we would just check to see nothing was rotting.
When they're big enough, they'll make it outside to stand ready to replace any of the trees should the worst happen. Also preparing for every eventuality are the constables, who are getting the morning briefing from Andre.
Right team, in summary, please take note, the gardens are going to become increasingly busy now. We're going to have a lot of children running around in the gardens. Weather forecast for today, rain expected, and stay dry, stay safe, and yeah, have a good day.
Time to hit the beat, and today it's Tom and Sophie's turn in the one and only patrol car.
Oh, the North Canal beds are looking good. The tulips are all starting to come up now.
They're on the lookout for any threats to the delicate spring growth.
This is a botanical garden. This is plants that have been collected across the world. They're grown for not just for their beauty, but also for their scientific interests and for research. And we do get the odd member of the public forgetting that this is a gardens, and we have had the odd hammock set up in the trees over the years that we ask them to remove.
And it's knowing that because of that, we have to sort of show a level of respect to the gardens in a way. So having a game of football could potentially be damaging plants that are growing underneath your feet.
Whilst Tom and Sophie travel in comfort, fellow officers Adele and Carol get to feel the wind in their hair.
Keep up. No, I've only got little legs. We can get past people, especially for first aids. First aids, lost children, you can go to all sorts of places on your bikes. Not allowed on the grass, but you can still get to places.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the first thing they spot isn't an emergency, but some friendly faces looking for a chat.
Oh, look, it's Neil. There's Neil over there, one of our regulars.
Hello, Trouble.
How are you?
And it just makes our day a little bit more pleasurable, by actually having people that we know and can have a chat with, and hopefully it makes their day a bit more pleasant rather than having sort of grumpy people or having to go and sort of like, oi, get out that tree, or what are you doing running through the garden, it's not allowed, etc.
The patrol must go on, though, whatever the weather, but there's worse places to be caught in the rain.
This is the cycle to have when you're having a bad day, with the view of the palm house, just to remind you where you are. Like I said, we get paid to do this, to cycle round and do our job. Oh, that's it. I give up. I think I'm on an office job now.
Still, rain or shine, duty always calls.
Quickest way, easiest way, straight up this path until you get to the big crossroads. So you're going to walk up here and then turn right, and the children's garden is here.
Okay.
Thank you. No worries.
The sky's clearing. The patrol moves into the temperate house.
Wow, that was a bit of a difference.
I know, that's a bit of sunshine.
Yep. Tries us out.
I have actually tried out now. Actually filled with trousers. We just come in and patrol around the glass houses on our patrols around the garden.
Make sure nobody's doing anything they shouldn't
be.
Like taking cuttings. When we've done it in the past, we've had reports of cuttings or people taking seeds, and we have had to confiscate them off them. So, yeah, it's something that we have to keep an eye on.
It's a joy to work here, though. Every day is different, isn't it? You can take a picture every day and everyone will still be different.
Just over 30 miles from West London, Kew has a big sister, Wakehurst, its wild botanic garden in Sussex. Radiating from an Elizabethan mansion and the state-of-the-art Millennium Seed Bank, this 535-acre site has its own explosion of bluebells every spring.
So en masse, our native bluebells create what I think is one of the most intense flowering spectacles in the world. But closer inspection reveals that every single flower has its own beauty of shape and form, and of course fragrance. And I think for me, that's why bluebells speak to me on many different levels. It's those opposing scales of beauty that really catch my eye.
Their appearance always brings Ian, head of landscape and horticulture, into the woods, but he's not here sightseeing.
Bluebells are really fragile, and they are at risk in the UK. Firstly by habitat destruction, but also they're under threat by their close cousin, the Spanish bluebell. So every single year I go out into the landscape and just check, just to make sure that they're not hybridizing with their Spanish cousin. They're actually perennial wildflowers, but they grow from a bulb, and they can reproduce in two ways, sexually by seed, but asexually also by splitting the bulb underground. And that enables them to create these wonderful carpets, and they spread really quickly through the woodlands.
The woods seem all clear of Spanish interlopers, but closer to the mansion, Ian's keen eyes spot something untoward.
So this is a really good example of where we can see the Spanish bluebell here to the left, really out competing our own native bluebell. and we can see the difference immediately. The more delicate curving form, deeper violet, more intense colour, compared to the Spanish bluebell, which is more erect in form, softer in colour, but really the main difference is these big basal leaves that are much larger and much broader. So the next steps here for us are to remove these. Even though they're in the formal part of the garden, they have no place here. This is why it's so important that we keep checking our own bluebells, but also why we say that other people shouldn't start planting these in gardens. We have a responsibility to protect our charming little bluebell. It would be sad to see this disappear from the countryside.
As well as a botanic garden, Wakehurst serves as a living laboratory for cutting-edge scientific work. Today, scientists can be found across the site conducting different experiments for an important study called Nature Unlocked, looking at how to counteract the effects of climate change. In the meadow, one team is led by Justin, an expert in creating computer models of the natural world.
This unit is a relatively standard but quite big drone. It also has a lot of kit at the bottom. We have a kind of a big processing unit, essentially a computer down here, but this bit at the top is the laser scanner. In here is a laser that spins around, basically shooting out lasers and collecting the distance to the object it's picking up. We also have a hyperspectral unit, and this picks up wavelengths of light that we wouldn't see in infrared, which is very important for vegetation health. We'll put it down now. Can you and Thomas get it out onto the field? Sure. Okay, starting mission.
This project is looking at carbon offsetting, a way of compensating for the release of greenhouse gases by planting carbon dioxide absorbing vegetation. Carbon offsetting is usually associated with investing in tree planting.
We see these big figures and big numbers coming out, millions of trees to be planted across the UK or across the world, etc. And whilst that is great, it's not just the trees, it's the rest of the environment.
Meadows, hedgerows, fungi, shrubs all absorb carbon too. But the question is, how much? The UK government is planning to plough billions into carbon offsetting and are funding the work here to make sure that the money gets spent wisely.
So this project is trying to get a better understanding of where that carbon is, in the trees and the soils and the ground, but also understanding where we might be in 10, 15 and 20 years' time.
The data they are collecting will be combined with the work of another team using ground-based scanners to create a complex 3D model of all plant life at Wakehurst.
Coming to land, okay? I'm going to bring it down just over here.
Further into the woods, scientists Laura and James have their sights set lower.
So in UK forests, around 80% of the carbon is stored in soil. Only approximately 20% of the carbon is stored in the vegetation, above ground.
As mycologists, experts in fungi, Laura and James are looking for a microscopic underground fungi called mycorrhiza that live in the tree roots.
90% of the plants on Earth form this symbiosis with these fungi. And 1/3 of the biomass in soil is mycorrhizal fungi.
Right below our feet, the plant is exchanging carbon that it gets from the photosynthesis, and it's exchanging that for nutrients that the fungi is providing.
Laura and James will be collecting thousands of soil samples from across Wakehurst. Then back at the lab in West London, they can identify which fungi are best at absorbing carbon.
And here you can see an example of a root that we collected, and we will identify the fungi that form them through DNA sequencing methods.
Meanwhile, Justin is turning his data into a 3D picture of all the plant life above ground.
So on the left, we have our one tree we've pulled out from the environment. We've highlighted the leaves in green, removed those, and we can count the number of leaves on it, and then essentially virtually chop the tree up into lots and lots of logs where we can calculate the volume of all of that density of wood and then the carbon within it.
This project will take 2 years to complete. Then this method could be rolled out across the country, helping us combat climate change far into the future.
And we're hoping that will actually carry on for hundreds, if not thousands of years if possible. And by measuring it over these really long time periods, it's going to be an incredibly important project to understand what's happening in that landscape.
Come back as the tree gang are hampered by some wandering waterfowl.
Seen a pair of mandarin ducks have gone into the cavity on the stem there.
Dan is expecting some very posh muck.
We're waiting for a manure delivery that comes from the Royal Household Cavalry in London.
Go! And the students take part in an important tradition.
It's a fast track today, the weather is good, and I'm sensing there could be some records set.
In the middle of the Royal Botanic Gardens queue is the stable yard, where a crew of horses used for mowing, ploughing and heavy transport once lived. They also produced a vital ingredient for top-of-the-range compost, tons of manure. Since the gardens haven't had horses since 1961, Sustainability Coordinator Dan has to get it from somewhere that does, and only the best will do.
We're waiting for a manure delivery that comes from the Royal Household Cavalry in London. All the other materials come from within site, from our horticultural activities, pruning, cutting things down, maintenance, and that's the only material we'll bring in from outside site to make our compost.
Every week, Dan takes delivery of 10 tons of high-grade horse dung.
This manure has come from the Queen's Regiment horses. Their horses are probably fed better than you and I. They are kept to the absolute highest standard. So, yeah, look no further.
How you doing, Mark? All right? We can just have a quick look, mate.
Yeah.
Make sure it's the good stuff. Lovely. That's brilliant. That's great, Mark. Thanks very much, mate. Yeah, when the delivery arrives, it is quite pungent. There is quite an odour to it, so it's not advisable to stand too close to it. But the more you work here, the more you get used to it. This is the magic material. It all looks fantastic.
Dan has become something of a manure connoisseur. But making top-quality compost takes more than the best manure money could buy. Like a fine wine, it must be carefully aged in the right conditions.
So we use this beautiful material and we blend it with our woody and our herbaceous waste, which gets separated in these two areas. Once it's blended and shredded, then it goes into a windrow over there for the maturation process, which is about 8 to 10 weeks. Once that's done, then it goes back out into the garden.
Over in Pagoda Vista, the 2 sickly red oaks will soon be heading to the great mulch pile, ready to nourish the next generation. In the Arboretum nursery, Kevin is close to deciding on a pair of new trees to take their place.
So this is Ginkgo biloba, the maidenhair tree. Now these trees are going to be very good. They're very well adapted. These trees are great for a vista. They grow upright, so they're very columnar. They're not going to be broad spreading trees. So it allows us to let them just grow naturally. We don't have to keep pruning in order to mutate the shape of the tree via pruning to keep that view open.
One thing may rule these out, though.
So we always try to plant the male Ginkgo. The female has this very smelly, fleshy fruit that smells like sick. It's an awful smell, so you don't want to start planting that on a main amenity view or vista.
After much pondering, Kevin may finally have a winner.
So these are Liriodendron chinensis. These are the Chinese tulip trees. These would be great replacements for the red oaks. These are more fastigiate, upright growing. They have a great leaf interest and have tiny flowers in the summer. They're also very adapted to growing in a dry climate. So for us at Kew, these would be like the ideal tree we're looking for.
All that's left to do is remove the old red oaks to make way. This job falls to the garden's team of arboriculturists, known as the Tree Gang. From the garden's earliest days, there's been a group of specialists who care for Kew's 12,000 trees. They have the equipment and know-how to handle any situation. Well, nearly any. Before he's even unpacked his chainsaw, Tom has to duck out of the job.
And we've seen a pair of mandarin ducks have gone into the cavity on the stem there. We've actually got a nesting area in the stem. So now, obviously, it's being nesting season, and this time of year, the mandarin duck's going to start sort of laying its eggs, incubating its eggs.
Unusually for ducks, the mandarin lays its eggs in trees. Then, when the hatchlings are born, the mother coaxes them to jump down. Until that happy day, this oak is going nowhere.
I think they'll lay their eggs this time of year and then they'll incubate it for up to 5 weeks. So if we come back and monitor it over the next 5 weeks and then see how it goes from there. That's as far as my knowledge on mandarin ducks goes.
Kevin's big plans will have to wait a while. But when you're planning in terms of centuries, patience is a given. Over in the School of Horticulture, the diploma students are taking part in an important part of their education, the annual clog and apron race. Once upon a time, a canvas apron and sturdy wooden clogs were considered practical workwear for horticulturists.
So these are the traditional clogs, as you can see, not high fashion, but made of wood, blocks of wood with some leather uppers nailed on, and then you have this almost like horseshoes put on to the bottom.
In the 1950s, a bunch of students decided to run a race in this traditional attire. Now every new course begins with this cherished tradition.
I don't think I've run since school when I was late for the bus and I had to sprint to the bus stop. And it wasn't as far as this, but you know.
I feel a bit worried that I'm going to hurt myself, but I think hopefully it'll be okay.
Though it's fair to say, the staff may cherish it more than the students.
It's a fast track today, the weather is good, and I'm sensing there could be some records set. I'm disappointed at the lack of betting, I must say. I would have expected a bookies pool in here somewhere, but no, they've let us down again. On your marks, get set, go! There was quite a lot of slippage going on there, I think.
Despite an early stumble, Lewis pips his rival Tim to the post and sets a new world record for clog and apron racing.
That was an incredible run, actually, 1 minute 02.8, trimming about 8 seconds off the fastest time on this course. Well done, great run.
Yeah, they're all right. I mean, I think I'll feel it in the morning. My ankles are shot to bits now, I reckon. But yeah, we'll see. All good. I'm used to wearing them heavy boots all day, so I should be fine.
It was even more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
Easy. Totally fine. Flew through it.
Next time, the Wakehurst Tree Gang tackle the rhododendron invasion.
It looks appealing when it's in flower. Actually, it just creates a desert where nothing else can grow.
Meet the scientists trying to save coffee from extinction.
This is a deal breaker, really, because if the coffee doesn't taste good, then the project's going nowhere.
And a new species of giant water lily makes a splash.
Oh my God, they've taken over. They really are monsters.